in installing depth finders, and basically it comes to 4 steps. The first step's mounting your hardware. That's mounting your GPS pucks, mounting your transducers, your side scan transducers, things of that nature. And this is one of those deals where you want to measure and plan and get a good idea where you want to do anything before you start drilling holes. And then basically, once you've got them installed, then you want to think about how you're going to run your cables, kind of plan that out ahead of time, because pulling cables, that's the next step. We'll talk about that in just a second, but I mean, that's the hard part of doing these installs. So you kind of want to think that out and plan it out before you actually get into pulling the cables through the conduit inside your boat. So, you know, you've got to think about mounting the LSS1 modules if you're installing a Lowrance side scan. So, you know, once you've got it planned out where everything is going to go, then it's a matter of getting the cables from the different components. You know, you're going to have your transducers in the back, you're going to have your shoot-through transducer down in your hull, you're going to have a GPS puck and things of that nature that you're going to have to deal with, and you've got to pull those cables as well as Ethernet cables. So pulling cables is usually better if you've got 2 guys, one that can feed a cable and then one that can pull it. And a trick a lot of guys use is to pull the cables with your old existing cables from the old units in your boat. You may have to do things like drill holes, so you can pass the cables through some different areas once you determine where you're going to mount your units. You know, obviously the unit on the back is going to mount on the console somewhere, and then the other one, the front one, can either be flush mounted in the dash, or what we did on my boat, we actually used a ram mount and mounted it right next to the recessed trolling motor pedal, and so we basically drilled some additional holes in that recessed pedal tray and pulled the cables underneath to make it a nice clean install. But again, we had to feed Ethernet cables from the LSS1 up to the front unit so we could have structure scan in the front. The third step of doing an install is mounting the actual units, and for the install we just recently did on my boat, we mounted the units on ram mounts. We used the largest ram mounts that they make. We mounted one at the console and also one at the front, and I like that because the ram mount gives you a lot of flexibility. You can raise it up, you can get the angle exactly right. It's easy to remove your units and take them out of the boat with you. The last step, of course, is making the connections. You know, power is a big deal with electronics. You want to make sure you've got fuses in line. You want to make sure you have really strong connections. Don't skimp on the connectors or the tools that you use to make the connection, so that you always have a good connection. That's where a lot of problems come into play. But if you take those precautions, follow these steps, you're going to end up with a nice, clean install when you get done with your graphs.